Good evening and welcome everybody. Thanks for taking the time out of your night to join us for this public hearing. This is a public hearing for the proposed Tilden Mine stockpile expansion. My name is Ryan Blazik. I'm with EGLE's Environmental Support Division. I'm just going to be your moderator for the public hearing tonight. Project location is in Tilden Township, Marquette County, Michigan. Just have a couple things to go through before we get started here. In case you haven't joined us for one of these public hearings, this is what our agenda is going to look like today. I'm going to start off with an introduction. That's what we're doing right now. Big thing to keep in mind, though, is that this public hearing is going to be in two parts. We're going to start off with an informational session. So we'll have a few words by EGLE on the application that EGLE received. They're going to talk about it a little bit. So that'll be an introduction to the project. Then we're going to have a question and answer session. So you will have an opportunity to ask questions of our EGLE panel related to the application and permitting process. We're going to talk about the ways to submit an official comment. And then whoever would like to make a statement tonight for the record on this project and application, you can do that tonight. We'll start our hearing portion. You'll be able to do that. We'll explain how we'll do that a little bit later. And then we're going to go through who to contact in case there are any additional questions. All right, a couple more logistical things. Just so you're aware, our lines are going to be muted during the hearing. You can hear us and everyone that's talking, but we can't hear you. You can communicate with us using the Q&A box in your Zoom toolbar, so you'll be using that for the Q&A portion as well. We'll also give you an opportunity to ask your question verbally, and we'll explain that before the Q&A portion. And then we'll also explain how we'll be taking comments a little bit later as well. And then also we are recording this hearing. So this is being recorded and we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. So you'll be able to watch it again or forward it on if you should choose. All right, at this time, I would like to invite our other EGLE staff who are on the line to turn their cameras on and introduce themselves before we get started.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Conklin. I work in the Water Resource Unit in the Marquette District Office, and I will be your hearing officer for tonight.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan McCone. I'm the Marquette District Supervisor for the Water Resources Unit here in Marquette.
Yeah, I'm Kyle Alexander. I'm the Field Operations Manager for the Water Resources Division.
I'm Ann Garwood, Supervisor of the Wetlands, Lakes, and Streams Unit for Water Resources Division.
And I'm Jay Parent, District Supervisor for Water Resources Division, Marquette office, covering the water quality side.
All right, thank you all for being here for this hearing tonight. I think we're going to go right into the information session. I've got your slides here, Kayla, so feel free to take it away when you're ready.
All right, so I've just got 3 slides to give an overview for the project. The applicant has chosen not to participate in the hearing, so I'm just going to give a brief overview. So this first slide is about the project purpose and summary. So Tilden Mining Company has applied for a permit under Parts 301 and Parts 303 to permanently fill 32.5 acres of wetlands and 272 feet of streams to provide an additional 93 million long tons of rock stockpile capacity to support the mine's 20-year iron ore production plan. So this is the 3rd project iteration, and the applicant has stated that they have evaluated numerous stockpile alternatives to reduce environmental impacts while supporting future mining operations. And that includes reducing wetland impacts to 32.5 acres compared to 99 acres in their 2022 application, reducing stream impacts to 272 feet compared to 6,749 feet in their 2022 application. And they also report that the current preferred stockpile is located within the existing footprint of the mine, so mine roads and pits. The applicant has also stated that they have conducted archaeological review and survey of the proposed area with no findings, and also evaluated potential impacts area to identify and avoid impacts to protected species, such as northern long-eared bats, wolves, and bald eagles. Next slide. Okay, so this slide here compares the current proposed stockpile footprint that's shown in the lower image here compared to the 2022 proposed stockpile footprint, and that application was withdrawn. In both of these images, what you're looking at is the darker gray area is the boundary of where the applicant is proposing to put rock fill to support their 20-year mining plan. The proposed impacts, these are areas that would be permanently filled, are shown in red, orange, and green, and proposed stream impacts are shown as blue lines. So again, the top image is from the 2022 application that was withdrawn. Most of the wetland and stream impacts were located in the northwest area of the stockpile boundary. And then the lower image is the current proposed footprint that we're evaluating tonight. In this current version of the application, the stockpile arrangement has been changed to mostly avoid the wetland and streams in this northwest corner. And instead, most of the rock fill is being placed towards the southwest and also towards the northeast. And again, the current proposal would permanently fill 272 feet of stream and 32 acres of wetland. And as previously stated, the current proposal is to stay within the existing mine footprint. Next slide. This slide is an overview of the mitigation that the applicant has proposed. So Tilden Mining Company has included two components of mitigation in this application. The first is wetland preservation within the Escanaba River watershed. So that's the watershed that's proposed to be impacted. And the applicant is proposing to permanently protect 289 acres of land in a conservation easement. And this easement would include the permanent protection of 114.9 acres of wetland and 4,079 feet of stream. It would be O'Neill Creek. And this image that you're seeing here is the proposed preservation area. It's located approximately 7 miles southeast of the mine. And the conservation easement boundary that's being proposed is shown in red. And then the second portion of the mitigation that's being proposed by the applicant is to utilize 31.53 wetland credit acres from the Republic Wetland Preserve. This is an established mitigation bank that's located in the Michigami watershed. So that's kind of what I have for an overview. So I'll turn it back over to you, Ryan.
All right, thank you very much, Kayla, for providing information on the project. So we're going to move right in the question and answer session. So a couple things I wanted to point out before we do that, though, that this is going to be a Q&A. So you'll have an opportunity to actually make a statement later on tonight. So, if you have a question for our panelists that we can answer, go ahead and you can either type that in the Q&A box. You'll see that at the bottom of your screen, send it to us. Or if you'd prefer to ask your question verbally, you can click the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen. And what we'll do is unmute you. You can unmute yourself. You can ask your question. If you're on the phone, you can type #2 on your phone receiver. And what that'll do is we'll raise your hand in Zoom. We'll call on you using the last 4 digits of your phone number. So we're going to go ahead. Thank you, our panelists for being here for this Q&A session. All right, I've got one question right now. How often does EGLE review wetland applications that seek to destroy 32 acres of wetlands?
I can start with that. How often do we review projects this large? I would say it's not very often. Mines are a little bit unique in that their alternative locations are limited because they have to mine where the resource is and the operation is quite large. So I would say larger than what we normally review. And anyone on the panel can feel free to add in if they would like.
Yeah, and in terms of absolute acreage, it is very large. But again, as Kayla mentioned, the area of the mine itself is also very large. So when you scale the two, the larger imprint or area of impact is commensurate with the size of the mine.
All right, thank you. Next question, how permanent is the permanent protection of the wetlands? Are we talking about a 50 or 100-year lease? How does the state ensure that mitigation sites are truly protected forever?
Yeah, so in terms of the areas that would be used for mitigation, those are protected in perpetuity. And so that's part of our jobs working for the department is to follow up and make sure that there's a conservation easement that's legally binding in perpetuity, and follow up to make sure those areas are protected, marked with signage, and remaining healthy, functioning wetlands in perpetuity.
Yeah, that easement is actually recorded on the deeds for the properties, so it follows with them in perpetuity.
All right, thank you both. Can you explain more about what a wetland credit is and more about the Wetland Mitigation Bank?
Yeah, I can take a crack at it, and then Anne, Ryan, and Kyle, feel free to chime in. So the banking works in a way that it's usually a site that was once wetland and was impacted or destroyed, and an applicant can restore those wetlands and then protect it in a conservation easement, make sure it meets certain criteria. And if it does, if it's functioning as a healthy wetland, then applicants can get credits for that. And the ratios are usually 1.5 to 1, meaning that for every 1.5 acres of way around, every 1 acre that you impact, you would need to use 1.5 credits from those wetland mitigation banks. So that's kind of the gist of how that situation works.
Yeah, and in this case, so most mitigation banks are constructed by a third party, and then once the wetlands have been fully created and established and monitored and are stable, those third parties are then allowed to sell off the credits. In this case, this was a site that Cleveland Cliffs took on themselves. It was part of the former Republic Mine, and did the restoration and creation work, not to sell the credits off, but for use internally. So it's a little different from a typical bank in that it's not somebody creating them to sell them off. In this case, they were created for use in offsetting future CCI impacts.
All right, thank you both. Why I'm gonna jump around a little bit because I think this one's relevant to what you just said, Ryan, about site selection. Why were the O'Neill Creek and Green Creek streams chosen for the preservation sites?
So preservation requires that the wetlands be of either a rare and imperiled type or very high quality without a lot of impact. And so it's not just choosing any wetland out there and saying I'm going to preserve this. It needs to be something that's really unique or special. In this case, they are wetlands that have largely been undisturbed. I mean, everything in the UP was logged at one point in time, but compared to most areas, these are very intact, very well functioning wetlands with very little history of impact, either directly or indirectly to them. And same with the streams. So, streams are part of the Escanaba watershed, which is important. And there's a lot of cold water fish habitat provided by those streams. And so again, they're streams that are sort of upper tier, for protection, that made them, it warranted using them for preservation.
All right, thank you.
And just to clarify on that too, so the state is not who chooses the preservation. The preservation is chosen by the applicant and proposed by the applicant, and we are reviewing that proposal.
And I think the next question is related to that as well. Who owns 114 acres now? I'm assuming that's referring to the preservation, right?
My understanding is that CCI owns most or all of it. Is that correct, Kayla?
Yes, that's my understanding as well.
All right, thank you. Who or what organization completed the potential impact area evaluations?
So CCI has a couple of consultants who worked on the application for them, and I'll let Kayla maybe answer that. Depending on what you're getting at with the question, though, just to be clear, the department, EGLE, will be evaluating the impacts against the statute to determine whether or not the application is permittable or not. But if you're asking who did the work for the applicant, I'll kick that over to Kayla.
Yeah, so I guess we repeat the question, Ryan.
Yeah, it was who or what organization completed the potential impact area evaluations?
Yeah, so the consultant for CCI did a lot of the evaluation, and then EGLE staff as well has been out. I think all of us on the panel have been out on site to evaluate those as well.
All right, thank you. It's good to know, there's a comment, it's good to know it's a large impact. What's the largest wetland loss, acres, EGLE permitted in the past year? Is that something anybody knows off the top of their head?
I don't know I was trying to think what the largest project or wetland impact was that we permitted in 2024. I don't know off the top of my head. I can say in the last few years, I've been involved in some projects that have been between 10 and 20 acres. There have been larger ones in the past. We'd have to look back at our reporting for 2024 to see what the largest was last year.
Thanks,
There was a
Kyle.
question in the comments that asked if we could say aloud how many participants are in this call. There's currently 36.
Yeah, I think that's 36, including the panelists, just so it looks like there's 29 people, actual attendees. Has EPA or USFWS, so U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, commented on the current corrected permit application?
Not currently. So the Fish and Wildlife Service and EPA will be providing comments for the application, and they have not done so yet. They will sometime in May as their deadline.
All right, thank you. All right, so next question. Tilden Mine, as of 22, was operating on an NPDES permit that expired a decade earlier, but the NPDES was administratively continued. What is the status of the Tilden NPDES? And then the second part of that is many of the stockpiles appear to have run off contact water. They're going to Ellie or Eli Creek area without proper stormwater capture. So I think we so there's two parts of the question. What's the status of the NPDES permit? And then, well, it looks like there's a comment related to runoff.
So the permit was reissued in September 2022, and it's in effect right now for the NPDES permit. And part of that permit is there's language for a stormwater management plan that regulates the stormwaters that come off the rock piles into the watersheds around the mine.
Thank you. Were there any rare and imperiled wetlands identified by the consultant?
Is that, I'm not sure if that's in the impact area or the preservation area, but if it's the proposed impact area, the answer to that is no.
Okay, and then they chimed in later, said or natural communities. I'm not sure.
Not within the impact area.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. All right, next up. The application claims that the eagle's nest located adjacent to the stockpile won't be impacted and that the eagles are somehow accustomed to the disruption. How was this determined?
Yeah, I can try to answer that one as best as I'm aware. So the applicant did conduct a EGLE survey after the last iteration of the application. During the public hearing, it came aware that there was an active nest in the proposed impact area. So they did identify at least one bald eagle's nest that was active during that survey in 2024 and determine its greater than 660 feet away from the impact area. And that their determination is that's far enough where it should not require a general disturbance permit from Fish and Wildlife Service. And at this time, we're anticipating that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will review those determinations and either agree or disagree. And if they say a general disturbance permit is required, then that will be a requirement with any future EGLE permit.
All right, thank you. I have a few more questions I'm going to get to in here, but I just wanted to give a reminder for those on the phone. If you're calling in and would like to make a comment, you can select or ask a question. You can select #2 on your receiver, and that will raise your hand in Zoom, and we'll call on you. Or if anybody would like to ask a question verbally. And again, just a reminder that hold on to any comments you have for the public hearing portion that we're going to have a little bit later on. We'll be able to make a statement on this application. Were there any?
Ryan,
Yeah, go
somebody
ahead.
asked to put the map back up on the screen while they're asking questions. So I'm just gonna see if that's possible to go back to that slide of the map.
Oh, there it is. Yep. Hold on one sec. There we go. Is that the one
Go back one more.
or the other one?
There we go.
Were there any trees that were identified as federally endangered northern long-eared bat habitat? Also, did the consultant do any bat echolocation?
There was a bat survey that was completed in conjunction with Michigan DNR Wildlife Division and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The results determined that there was likely going to be no impact in this project.
And then on the last application, I'll just add the Fish and Wildlife Service did suggest or require some conservation measures to avoid potential impacts to northern long-eared bats. If you want to read about the survey that they did, those are in Appendix E of the application. And that also includes the conservation measures. Basically, it's cutting windows that would be required in a future permit application to avoid potential impacts to bats, even though they didn't find any in their surveys.
I'm just going to add one more thing to that. The difference between some of the acreage is significantly less forested now. There's only 2 acres of forested that will be impacted now, with the vast majority of it being emergent wetland with no trees.
Right. Thanks, Ann. So this next question is more of a statement, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit into a question. Can EGLE make it mandatory for wetland consultants to identify rare and imperiled wetlands? It's worded as EGLE should make it mandatory, but that's not a question. So I guess
Yeah, I'll clarify that they are supposed to do that. That is something that is supposed to be identified by applicants. And when we review applications, we are confirming whether or not the wetland types have been identified properly. And so in this case, the applicant has not identified any rare and imperiled wetlands in the impact area, and we will be reviewing and confirming that.
All right, thank you. The application's environmental impact statement is 25 years old, which seems outdated. How often does EGLE require an applicant to complete the environmental impact? I'm assuming environmental impact assessment that they're referencing.
So there's been a cumulative impact study, which has been continually updated up through current. I'm not sure if that answers the question or not.
Yeah, I'll just clarify that at the federal level, there are specific documents called an environmental impact assessment that are required in the application. That's not the same in the state permitting process. Essentially, all of the impacts do need to be assessed and evaluated at the current time. So every application should include that information. And that is a big part of what we're looking for when reviewing the application materials, both for completeness and for consideration of the responses. So there isn't necessarily an updated document with that same title, but some of the other documents, like Ryan mentioned, the cumulative impacts assessment and the application itself with the responses to those questions do provide that information.
Right. Thank you. I'm not sure if we can answer this one because it's related. It says because it's a tax question. Has Cleveland Cliffs fully paid taxes owed to the community?
That's not
Question for
information.
The local community.
No, that's not information that would be part of our application review.
Were little brown bats found in the study area?
I do not believe so.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head. The full bat survey is listed in the application. I know I think they only captured one bat. I don't remember what the exact species.
And then there's just, okay, here we go. What time of the year was the bat survey done? And was the bat survey done by mist netting or by bat echolocation? If you want to know if bats are present, the consultant should use bat echolocations. If not, EGLE should require it.
So I'll
refer you
just say that
back
the
to this-
requirements of the bat survey were the requirements of US Fish and Wildlife Service, not our program. So they work directly with the applicant to develop the bat study and the requirements that they needed to follow for that study. That was not something that we developed or reviewed. It was simply provided to us once it was completed.
All right, thanks. And then there was just a comment related to that. Since the NLEB survey was first completed, additional bat species are under review by endangered species by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And I don't have any other questions. We can maybe squeeze one more, and if one pops up before we have to move on to the next part. If we don't have any other questions, though, what we'll do is we'll move on to the next part of the hearing. All right, so we've got one final question here. The applicant's it says that there was the applicant's bat survey was bad, that so bad the consultant didn't know how much of the site was cut or covered in waste rock. Is that adequate? I'm not sure else.
So I'll just say that
Yeah, go ahead.
Fish and Wildlife does have another opportunity to review and comment on this application, as we mentioned earlier. So the federal agencies have an opportunity to provide additional comment or ask for additional information at this time. But the way our review works is we coordinate with those regulatory agencies, so Fish and Wildlife Service and DNR.
All right. Thank you, Ann. Yeah, thanks to all of you for asking those great questions. We got through a ton of them, like 22 questions that were asked and then that we answered. Thank you all, everyone on the panel for being here for those. So the next part, we're going to go through the other ways to submit a comment before we get into the hearing part of the evening. Just in case you didn't want to make a statement tonight, for the record, there are other ways you can make a comment through the MyEnviro, through the submission HQ7 RV 67-78H94, and we're going to put that link to MyEnviro in the chat so you'll have access to it, along with the mailing address, which is another way to make a comment to EGLE Marquette District Office. Attention, Kayla Conklin, Kayla, and then last name Conklin, and that's to the EGLE Water Resources Division, Marquette District Office, PO Box 30458, Lansing, Michigan 48909-7958. And the comment period will be open for 10 days, which will be March 20th. Just wanted to make sure I read that aloud for anyone on the phone. And I want to also mention that we will be providing this slide again tonight in case you don't get through all of your comment with the time allotted, or in case you have additional comments after you make your statement. All right, so at this time, I'd like to invite Kayla to read the opening statement, which will kick off the hearing part tonight.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kayla Conklin. I'm the district representative in the Water Resources Division of the Marquette Department, Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. I will be serving as the hearings officer for this public hearing on EGLE submission number HQ7 RV6778H94. With me tonight is Ryan McCone, Marquette Water Resources Unit District Supervisor, Kyle Alexander, Field Operations Section Manager, Ann Garwood, Wetlands, Lakes, and Streams Unit Supervisor, and Jay Parent, Marquette Water Quality Unit District Supervisor. They were introduced earlier, but this is the recorded part of the hearing. To describe how this is going to work, I will begin with some background information about why we're here tonight. I will then describe the purpose of the hearing and how your comments will be used. Following that, I will outline the procedure under which we will take your comments and then describe what will happen after the hearing. It will then be time for you to provide comments, and we will spend the majority of the time tonight listening to those comments. At the end of the hearing, I will read the closing statement. By way of background information, the Water Resources Division is responsible for administering a variety of programs that help protect inland lakes and streams, wetlands, floodplains, sand dunes, and the Great Lakes. These programs regulate certain activities such as dredging or filling a lake, a stream, a wetland, constructing a dam, constructing a marina, placing shore protection or constructing docks, and building in a designated critical sand dune area, wetland, or floodplain. The law governing those responsibilities is the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, 1994 PA 451 as amended. We are here tonight because the Tilden Mining Company has proposed to permanently fill 32.5 acres of wetlands and 272 feet of streams to provide an additional 93 million long tons of rock style capacity to support the mine's 20-year iron ore production plan. Mitigation is proposed through preserving 114.9 acres of wetland and 4,079 linear feet of stream within the Escanaba River watershed, which is the watershed of proposed impact, as well as utilization of 31.53 wetland credit acres from the Republic Wetland Preserve. The purpose of the public hearing. In order for a permit to be granted, EGLE must find that the proposed activities described in the public notice meet certain criteria set by Part 301 Inland Lakes and Streams and Part 303 Wetlands Protection of Act 451. In general, we must consider the effect of the proposed project on streams and wetlands. When reviewing an application for permit under the provisions of Part 301 of Act 451, EGLE is charged to make the following considerations as required by Section 30106 of Part 301. First, the department shall issue a permit if it finds that the project will not adversely affect the public trust or riparian rights. The department shall not grant a permit if the proposed project will unlawfully impair or destroy any of the waters of the natural resources of the state. When reviewing an application for permit under Part 303, Wetlands Protection, EGLE is charged to make the following determinations as required by Section 30311 of Part 303. A permit for an activity listed in Section 30304 shall not be approved unless the department determines that the issuance of a permit is in the public interest, that the permit is necessary to realize the benefits derived from the activity, and that the activity is otherwise lawful. In addition, a permit shall not be issued unless it is shown that an unacceptable disruption will result to the aquatic resources. And two, a permit shall not be issued unless the applicant shows either of the following: that the proposed activity is primarily dependent upon being in a wetland, or two, a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to provide anyone interested in Tilden Mining Company's application an opportunity to provide information that EGLE can use in making a decision whether or not to issue a permit. Please recognize that EGLE can only use the information you provide if it relates to the criteria that EGLE must use in making a decision. Some of you may simply want to express your support or opposition to the project. We will be happy to make note of your position, but please understand that EGLE is, by law, not allowed to base our decision on whether or not there is widespread support or opposition to the project. Procedures. In just a moment, I will outline the procedures we will use for taking your comments. But before I do so, I need to mention that the notice of this hearing was published in the Mining Journal on February 22nd, 2025. As we discussed at the beginning of the informational session, if you have a comment to provide, raise your hand in the Zoom toolbar. To ensure that the hearing is conducted in a fair manner, we will follow these steps. First, EGLE already provided a brief overview of the project. Second, we would like to then call on those who have indicated in their registration that they would like to speak. After that, we will call on those that raise their hands in Zoom to make a comment if they have not already done so. As a reminder, if you are participating in this hearing via telephone only, please follow the instructions of the moderator on how to identify that you would like to make a comment. You may also submit comments to EGLE via MyEnviro portal, email, or US mail. When all the comments have been completed, we will ask if anyone else would like to make a statement. When your name is called, your microphone will become unmuted. As you begin your comments, please state your name and any group or association you represent. Each person will be given 3 minutes to make their comments. We will then indicate to you that when you have a minute left. Please begin wrapping up your comments and end within the allotted time. If need be, we'll indicate when your time has ended. I ask that we be courteous tonight and respectful to one another. Please also recognize that EGLE staff is here tonight to provide a fair opportunity for you to express your comments on the proposed project and to listen to those comments. This hearing is being recorded and your comments will be part of the information EGLE will consider in making its decision on whether or not to issue a permit on the proposed project. The public comment period for this public hearing is going to be open for 10 days, ending on March 20th, 2025. Additional information and comments submitted in writing during the 10-day public comment period will also be considered in EGLE's decision. Following the close of the public comment period, EGLE will make a decision to either issue a permit for the project as proposed or with modifications, or send a letter of denial. You may find out what the decision is by checking the MyEnviro portal website and searching for the application number HQ7 RV6778H94. Thank you for your attention. We will begin calling the names of those who have indicated that they would like to make a statement.
Yeah, thank you, Kayla. Couple other quick things. Everyone will get an opportunity to make a statement. It'll be 1 comment per person. As Kayla mentioned, it'll be 3 minutes per comment. If your name is called and you have somebody else on the line who hasn't made a comment and would like to, let me know, and then they will also have an opportunity to make a comment, so that everybody has the opportunity to make 1 comment. Also, you'll see a countdown timer in the corner of your screen for those of you logged in, and that'll count down from 3 minutes so you know how much time you have left. When there's 1 minute left, there'll be a dinger that you'll hear sound like this, just for your personal reference, so you know about how much time you have left. You don't have to use all of your time if you don't like to. If you wouldn't like to, it's up to you. And we're going to start, as Kayla mentioned, with the people during registration who indicated they want to make a comment. I have 5 names listed. I'll first list the first one up, and then who's going to be next so that you'll know you're next. And then after we get through those 5 names, we'll go to anybody who has their hand raised who has not made a comment yet. So with that, we have Jane Fitkin. Jane, we are going to unmute you on our end. You can unmute yourself, and then you can begin your comment when you're ready.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, my name is Jane Fitkin. I live in Marquette County, and I speak on behalf of the members, staff, and board of Citizens for a Safe and Clean Lake Superior. We urge EGLE to deny or require significant changes to Tilden's permit request. Despite the reduction in impacts from Tilden's previous applications, 32.5 acres of wetlands is still extreme by Michigan and national standards and would have tremendous impacts on a watershed already heavily impacted by mining. The applicant's proposed activities are clearly not dependent upon being in a wetland, so alternatives that don't impact wetlands should be seriously considered. According to EGLE, alternatives are feasible and prudent if they'd result in less impact to aquatic resources, and if the alternative is available and capable of being done after considering cost, existing technology, and logistics. The alternatives analysis in this application also fails to demonstrate that wetland impacts are unavoidable, as the applicant claims. The storage capacities of CD3C and CD3D differ by only 26.1 million long tons. We've identified 2 other alternatives that result in minimal watershed impacts with acceptable increases in cost. The minimal loss of storage capacity through the use of CD3D instead of CD3C could easily be made up through partial use of CD1 or TFWC, which both have more than enough capacity to make up the difference. Although the applicant dismisses full use of the CD1 and TFWC areas as cost prohibitive, we believe that in combination with areas shared with the applicant's preferred alternative, like CD3D, TFWB, and TWP Road, it would be feasible to use either the southernmost portion of the TFWC area or the southernmost portion of CD1 to make up the difference in stockpile capacity lost in the easternmost portion of CD3C, which if used, would require filling significant wetland acreage. These alternatives would require use of 26.1 million long tons of either CD1 or TFWC. These options would result in wetland impacts of approximately 13.6 acres and no stream impacts, while increasing project costs marginally in relation to the overall cost of the operation. Also, the use of credits from the Republic Wetland Preserve Bank should be denied for wetland impacts proposed by this permit because the applicant can avoid most wetland impacts by use of our suggested alternatives. To accomplish Michigan's long-term goal of no net loss of wetlands, we recommend restoration and long-term protection of historic wetlands within the Schweitzer Creek watershed for mitigation. Beaver wetlands in this area and headwater lakes, including Grass Lake, Lake Sally, and Lake Ogden, have been degraded by the development of roads, railroad grades, utility corridors, logging, and 175 years of iron mining under Cleveland Cliffs ownership, and yet they still provide valuable ecosystem services and have proven to be remarkably resilient. I urge you to require to reduce their wetland impacts further or deny their request. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for your comment, Jane. Right. All right, next up is going to be Michael Grantz, and then after Michael is Brian Fisher. So Michael, it looks like you're unmuted. You can begin when you're ready.
All right, good evening. My name is Michael Grantz, and I'm the Vice President of the United Steelworkers Local 4950 here in Negaunee, Michigan. I'm here today as a concerned resident and a hard rock iron miner here in the Central UP, and I am in strong support to approve the Tilden Mine's expansion permit. At USW Local 4950, we represent approximately 600 workers in the Central UP across both public and private sectors and many diverse businesses. However, the majority of our members, including myself, are employed by Cleveland Cliffs in the mining department of the Tilden Mine. We are the boots on the ground. For 177 years, the ore that has left the Marquette Iron Range has helped build our community, state, and our nation. Mining, and even more broadly, the steel industry as a whole, is a very competitive business. Constant pressures from foreign imports, steel dumping, and foreign subsidized goods are just a few of the challenges our industry faces every day. Remaining competitive in a global market is key to keeping the Marquette Iron Range competitive and the Central UP economically vibrant for another 177 years. Cleveland Cliffs has made great progress to minimize our environmental impacts through the years, with such projects as replacing the Presque Isle Power Plant with modern natural gas generation and our selenium capture project, just to name a few. We are the miners, are the largest direct impact on our local environment in and around the mine. We are deeply vested in protecting both because we live here. If it can't be grown, it has to be mined. It's been a catchphrase for miners for a long time. But with humanity's never-ending thirst for goods, we must never forget these materials will always be mined somewhere, most times in countries with a much greater environmental and human cost. We here in Michigan, with our vast supply of natural resources, along with a world-class workforce, must be more focused on supplying the minerals needed to supply the world's thirst, as we do so in the most environmentally responsive, productive, and safe manner than anyone else in the world. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right, next up is Brian Fisher, and then after Brian is Brian Noel. Brian Fisher, it looks like you are unmuted. You can begin when you're ready.
Okay, thanks a lot. My name is Brian Fisher, and I am a staff representative for District 1 of the United Steelworkers Union. United Steelworkers District 1 recommends the granting of this application. Domestic production of iron ore and steel ore are essential to our economy and to our national security. And it's environmentally sound to produce this iron ore that we produce at the Tilden Mine in our country. Iron ore that's made in the US emits tons less carbon dioxide than iron ore and steel that's produced outside of the country. The local economy depends on the viability of this mine. The economic effects of a slowdown or a shutdown of the mine would be devastating to the Negaunee Marquette area. Approval of this application would help the mine remain competitive and retain our ability to produce this iron ore in the area. And we compete with mines within the US and globally. We think that Cleveland Cliffs has worked hard to make this proposal environmentally and economically beneficial. The impact of this if this application were denied, could potentially result in burning exponentially more diesel fuel to haul the rock a greater distance, impacting air quality. This application is the best solution for stockpiling this rock. You know, my kids live in the UP. Mike Gronz's kids live in the UP. You know, we all hunt and fish and enjoy the wilderness, and we feel strongly that this is the best solution possible. The company's worked to mitigate the impact, the environmental impact. This application strikes the balance of being economically feasible to allow the Tilden mine to continue to operate, protects the environment, and minimizes the footprint. I and the United Steelworkers District 1 strongly encourage and support the granting of this application. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right. Next up is Brian Noel, and then after Brian is Zoe Folsom. So Brian, yep, we can hear you.
Great. I speak on behalf of the 230 members, staff, and board of the Yellow Dog Watershed Reserve in response to Cleveland Cliffs' updated JPA permit proposal for Tilden Mine. We've talked about the request to fill 32.5 acres of wetlands and 272 feet of streams in the Escanaba River watershed. While we appreciate the company's reduction in the proposed impacts from its previous application, in which it asked to fill 78 acres of wetlands, we believe two other alternatives considered in its new assessment are even better. Subsection 4 of Section 303 of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act stipulates that a permit shall not be issued unless the applicant shows that the proposed activity is primarily dependent on being located in a wetland and a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist. We respectfully suggest that the company has yet to meet these conditions, considering that it could reach its goals while reducing wetland impacts even further. On page 17 of its prudent and feasible alternatives analysis document, it sets out two less damaging alternate options. The less costly of these would reduce the overall impact of the project to a total of 13.6 acres of wetlands and no damage to streams, while still enabling the company to stockpile the estimated amount of waste rock that will accumulate in the next phase of mine development. The economic effect on the company of adopting this option is relatively slight, amounting to an increase of only $11 million over the lifetime of the project. Another alternative, although more expensive, would reduce the wetland impact to 6.7 acres. We recommend, in observance of the law, that EGLE require the company to adopt one of these, quote, feasible and prudent alternatives, preferably that which involves the least destruction to wetlands. In addition, we are concerned that although the proposed wetland mitigation is partly within the same watershed, it would be more impactful if it were within the project area itself. Ideally, the Ely Creek corridor containing a cold water trout stream, an active bald eagle's nest, and evidence of gray wolf activity. Much of the mitigation in the present proposal relies on the Republic Wetland Preserve, which is not only located outside the watershed, but is also constructed atop old mine tailings and does not have the same integrity as an intact natural system. Thank you for considering our comments and for your hard work safeguarding Michigan's natural resources.
All right, thank you for your comment, Brian. All right, next up is Zoe Folsom. and then we're going to go to the raised hands. So if you haven't made a comment and would like to raise your hand in Zoom, if you're on the phone, select #2. All right, Zoe, it looks like you're unmuted. You can begin when you're ready.
Hello, my name is Zoe Folsom, and I'm a board member of Citizens for a Safe and Clean Lake Superior, and I'm speaking from Marquette today to urge EGLE to deny Tilden's permit request to fill 32.5 acres of wetlands with mine waste. These impacts are unacceptably high and must be considered with the utmost scrutiny. Wetland mitigation must proceed in sequence: avoid, then minimize, then compensate. Tilden has failed to explore all feasible options to avoid impacts to wetlands. One of the highest priorities for EGLE's consideration is to choose the alternative that avoids wetlands impacts to the maximum extent practicable. Federal law states that compensatory mitigation may not be used as a method to reduce environmental impacts in the evaluation of the least environmentally damaging practicable alternatives for the purposes of requirements. The applicant proposes to mitigate 32.5 acres of destruction of natural wetlands with 31.5 acres of man-made wetlands, and the preservation of 114.9 acres of existing wetlands in the watershed, but off-site, 8.4 miles southeast of the impacts. I understand there have been improvements made to this mitigation plan relative to last year's application, but the proposed wetland mitigation site for this project is still inadequate. Much of this plan still relies on the Republic Wetland Preserve, which is not only outside of the watershed, but also whose wetlands are likely not entirely functional because they're built on top of old mine tailings left there by Cleveland Cliffs itself. To call the Republic Wetland Preserve wetlands worthy of replacing the functions of natural wetlands in the Schweitzer and Warner Creek subwatersheds is an insult to the thousands of years of growth, functionality, and resiliency those wetlands have endured. If Tilden claims to be avoiding impacts to the Schweitzer Creek wetlands previously threatened by Tilden's 2024 joint permit application, they should mitigate losses incurred by their new proposed waste stockpile expansion by restoring and preserving those very wetlands. These historic wetlands face continuous threat of degradation and destruction from Tilden's ongoing mining activities, making it a strong statement of their commitment to long-term watershed protection to restore and preserve these wetlands. Additionally, restoration and preservation of these wetlands, estimated around 50 acres, are owned by the applicant and would allow them to exceedingly meet their mitigation requirements. We're talking about the largest and deepest environmental scar in Marquette County. This application does not meet permitting criteria as outlined by Section 404 of the Federal Clean Water Act or Michigan's Parts 303 and 301. We ask that you use the authority imparted by Section 404, Parts 303 and 301, and other relevant regulatory provisions to deny or require significant changes to this joint permit application. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment, Zoe. All right, so next up, we're going to go to the raised hands. So Tom Gordewall.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. You can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Tom Grotwall. I'm a resident of the Western Upper Peninsula, and my family and I are currently considering real estate in Marquette County, but we are finding ourselves greatly limited by the presence of mining operations and their potential for expansion. So I'm speaking today from that perspective. The intention of the applicant here is to eliminate impacts to bald eagles, long-eared bats, and other life forms to whom we have granted special status. However, wetlands and streams are key to the health of the entire regional ecology. And the thing about bats and eagles and most animals is that they move around. They travel in search of food, mates, new nesting sites. So let's not fool ourselves. Any destruction of wetlands and streams will 100% result in a reduction of insects and other prey species, as well as the general vitality crucial for these special status life forms, as well as potential sites for mating and nesting. These species are sensitive in the first place because their habitat is a shrinking island, and projects like this one, which destroy wetlands and streams, shrink that habitat further. Now, the mining company Cleveland Cliffs exports the vast majority of the wealth created from this operation out of the Upper Peninsula, out of Michigan, off to Cleveland, as they've been doing for over a century. Overall, this demotion of the Upper Peninsula to a resource colony status has resulted in the long-term impoverishment of this area, not its enrichment. For example, this project continues to reduce the livability of the areas outside Negaunee and Ishpeming at a time when Marquette is experiencing a housing crisis, and folks such as myself are looking for other real estate options nearby. Here's a question for everybody, especially those speaking in favor of the project. Have any economic benefits from the mine been comprehensively weighed against the economic detriment that comes from making this vast area completely uninhabitable and unappealing to present and future humans like my family searching for real estate in the vicinity of a clean environment? I don't think so. Additionally, Cleveland Cliffs have been overdue on $50 million worth of taxes, which local communities have had to fight tooth and nail to see paid. So the state certainly doesn't owe them any favors. Michigan has a zero wetland loss policy. Mitigation, especially of subpar wetlands made from mine tailings, as at the Republic site, does not change the fact that 32.5 acres will have been lost. 32 is certainly better than 79 or 99, but it isn't zero. If the application as originally submitted has already been modified once, then it can certainly be modified again. Citizens for a Safe and Clean Lake Superior and the Yellow Dog Watershed Preserve have already given you superior proposals. Please deny the company's applications until any impacts are truly unavoidable as required by law. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment, Tom. All right, next up is Josh Brown. All right, Josh, you're unmuted.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Brown, and I'm speaking as a resident of Marquette today to urge EGLE to deny Tilden's permit request to fill 32.5 acres of wetlands and 272 linear feet of streams with mine waste. These impacts will have permanent effects on our watersheds, and they should be considered very seriously. I want to emphasize that in line with the law, EGLE, and EPA regulations, avoidance of impacts is the highest priority. And this company has the ability to completely avoid stream impacts. Although if the applicant proceeds with its current preferred alternative, the proposed stream mitigation plan for this project is inadequate. Preservation of existing streams does not adequately replace the impact of the complete destruction of 272 linear feet of streams in the Goose Lake Inlet sub-watershed of the East Branch Escanaba River. In the current application, EGLE lists 5 possible types of stream impacts. These are identified as enclosure, relocation, dredging, armoring, or other. And other is described by EGLE as, quote, activities that result in loss of stream functions. Examples may include altering stream hydrology through the addition or removal of water, or increasing the rate of stormwater runoff to the stream channel, building of dams or creating impoundments, etc., end quote. The applicant's type of impact, which is labeled as fill, fails to even be described as an example of an impact falling under other, due to the filling of a stream with waste rock resulting in complete and utter destruction of any semblance or function of a stream. These impacts are more significant than any impacts expected by EGLE's regulatory framework, and therefore mitigation for their impact should be taken more seriously. I urge that EGLE require the applicant to restore and preserve degraded streams near their proposed impacts, preferably in the Schweitzer Creek watershed within the proposed impact zone from Tilden's previous joint permit application. The restoration of these streams would preserve waterways previously threatened by the applicant's mining activities instead of streams off-site that face minimal impact of threat. Through Tilden and Empire, Cliffs has destroyed almost 1,000 acres of wetlands and lakes and over 100,000 linear feet of streams in the Escanaba River watershed. These impacts are unacceptable and they are avoidable. EGLE has an opportunity and a responsibility to scrutinize these projects that seek to destroy our environment and poison our water, and I ask that you use your statutory authority to deny this permit application as it's currently written. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. All right, is there any other, that was my last raised hand so far. If there's anyone who still would like to make a comment and you haven't done so already, please raise your hand in Zoom. I'll call on you in turn. If you're on the phone, you can select #2, which will raise your hand in Zoom, and then we'll call on you and unmute you using your phone number. All right, so Kathleen Heidemann. So Kathleen, you are unmuted on our end. You should be able to unmute yourself and begin when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi. Well, terrific comments from everyone tonight, and thank you for the hearing. I would echo the comments of the Citizens for a Safe and Clean Lake Superior. I do want to point out that the permit has changed from a 25-year estimated life of mine to a 20-year estimated life of mine in the current application without explanation. The life of mine is a major consideration because it seems to me, rather than a true estimate of the life of the project and a way of balancing or calculating the benefits against the detriments of the proposed project, the life of mine is just incrementally extended by 20 years. So I would like to have the applicant give additional information on how the life of the mine is calculated, and whether the area currently proposed for the road stockpile addition impacts would be potentially remined in the future, be due to the pit expansion in that area, which I believe was shown in one of the company's past corporate reports, that they're planning on extending the stockpile in the direction of the road area where they're going to be filling between the two stockpiles. In terms of the 1.49 acres, I think that the comments on preservation were really important. The applicant does not demonstrate that the wetlands that they're proposing to preserve are actually under threat. The applicant owns these wetlands. They have not identified this as an area that they have intended to mine. And this is going back through their corporate reports. They don't have plans for a tailing basin in that area. So I would like to have additional information on the applicant's proposal to protect these wetlands. Finally, in terms of the size of the impacts, I believe that it's exponentially underestimated due to the fact that it does not consider fully the secondary impacts, only the direct impacts. And the secondary impacts will include dewatering of the pit, as well as capture of water that is coming off of the stockpiles and from underneath the stockpiles. That was the question about the NIPD's permit, which is supposed to be treating some of it as stormwater. Currently, it's still contributing to Ely Creek and those wetlands. And so there will be additional diminution and degradation of those wetlands and Ely Creek as a result of the pit expansion and the stockpile expansion and stormwater capture, which is really not considered in the permit application. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment, Kathleen. All right, are there any other, anybody else out there who hasn't made a comment who would like to make a comment? Just raise your hand in Zoom, or if you're on the phone, select the pound symbol 2, and that will raise your hand and we'll call on you. If we don't have any other comments, what we'll do is we'll go through those, or any other comments that need to be made. We'll go through those other ways to submit a comment, in addition to tonight, and then also who to contact in case you have additional questions. So with that, I'm not seeing any other raised hands. So Kayla, would you like to read the closing statement for us tonight before we move on?
Thank you for your comments and cooperation. We appreciate your interest in the proposed project and that you took the time to be here tonight. As indicated in the beginning of the hearing, you may submit additional written comments until March 20th, 2025. Following the close of the public comment period, we will consider all comments received and make a decision on the proposed project. Just to remind those that may still want to make a comment, you can submit those via MyEnviro portal, via email, or via US mail. And the hearing is now closed. Thank you again.
All right, thank you, Kayla. As Kayla mentioned, you can still submit comments to MyEnviro. Submission HQ7-RV67-78H94. And we put the link to MyEnviro in the chat, and then also by mail to EGLE, Marquette District Office. Attention, Kayla Conklin, Kayla, first name, second name, Conklin. And that's to EGLE, Water Resources Division, Marquette District Office, P.O. Box 30458, Lansing, Michigan, 48909-7958. And as mentioned, that comment period will be open for 10 days, which is March 20th. In case there are any additional questions out there, we have The question comment is over as well as the hearing portion tonight. But if you have questions, you can contact Kayla at 906-869-4703. And again, that's 906-869-4703, or at Conklin K3, CONKLINK3, that's the number 3, at michigan.gov, michigan.gov. And again, just a reminder, you can submit official comments through EGLE's My Enviro portal. You can contact Kayla in case you have any questions. All right, I'd like to invite Ryan to have make any closing comments for us tonight.
I just want to thank everybody for their continued interest in this project and this process. We do greatly appreciate you taking the time to look through the documents ahead of time. Formulate some really good questions and comments, and just appreciate you taking time to meet with us tonight. With that, just one last plug for the My Enviro portal. That is the quickest, safest, and most efficient way you can provide your comments to us. It is not a difficult process. And so I would advise anybody who's interested in providing further comment to use that route. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Ryan.
All right, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, thanks to all of our panelists here for being here for this hearing, and to all of you for participating in it. Just last reminder, this was recorded, and a closed caption recording of this hearing will be on EGLE's YouTube channel in a couple of days, in case you want to check it out then. With that, hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Thanks again.